Welcome, chosen ones, to this transformative journey. If you've ever felt like you're waiting for something bigger to happen in your life, then you're exactly where you need to be. In today's video, we're diving deep into divine timing, spiritual breakthroughs, and the incredible transformation that awaits you. The universe has aligned this moment for you right now, and everything you've been praying for is closer than you think. So, if you're ready to step into your divine purpose, to unlock the mysteries of your true potential, then make sure you stay with us through the entire video. It's not by accident that you're here. God's plan for your life is unfolding now, and you're about to witness miracles. I want you to stop for a moment and recognize something powerful. The very fact that you're watching this video right now is no accident. This is a moment of divine interruption, and heaven has intentionally directed your steps to this video. You may have been going about your life, thinking that everything was just happening by chance. But I'm here to tell you that this is a sacred encounter. God has been watching over you, protecting you, guiding you to this moment, and now He is calling you to take a step into something much bigger than yourself. There's a powerful truth I want to share with you. The delays you've faced, the doors that have remained closed, the unanswered prayers you've experienced, none of it has been by mistake. It has all been part of divine protection. You might be wondering how the closed doors and the waiting seasons fit into the bigger picture. You may have thought that you missed your chance or that you were somehow behind. But I want to assure you, these delays were not punishment. They were divine protection. God has been building walls around what isn't meant for you, closing doors that would have led you in the wrong direction, and preparing the perfect timing for the breakthrough that is now coming. You see, when we face delays or opposition, it's easy to think that we've been overlooked or abandoned by God. But God's delays are not denials. Sometimes, He keeps us in waiting because He is protecting us from what we cannot yet see. There are things in your life that you might think you need right now, relationships, opportunities, circumstances, but in God's perfect wisdom, He knows exactly when you are ready to step into them. And until that moment arrives, He will guard you. He will close doors, redirect your path, and even place barriers in front of you to ensure that nothing can disrupt the divine plan He has for your life. Have you ever felt frustrated by a delay, only to look back later and realize that it was the best thing that ever happened to you? Maybe you were waiting for a job, a relationship, or an opportunity that never came, and at the time, you couldn't understand why. But now, looking back, you see that the very thing you wanted would have taken you down the wrong path, or it would have prevented you from receiving something far better. This is how divine protection works. God is not denying you anything good. He is simply preparing you for something greater, something that aligns perfectly with your divine calling. I want you to take a moment to reflect on the delays in your life. Instead of seeing them as setbacks, I encourage you to start seeing them as signs of God's protection. Every closed door is a divine redirection. Every moment of waiting is an opportunity for God to strengthen you, to prepare you for the greater things He has in store. The delays you've faced aren't punishment, they're preparation. They are part of God's plan to protect your destiny. As you embrace this truth, I want you to also understand that this moment, this divine encounter, is not by accident. You are here because heaven is calling you into your divine purpose. The very reason you're hearing these words right now is because God has been orchestrating the events of your life to bring you to this point. You may not have understood the journey up until now, but God has been leading you, preparing you, and shaping you for the divine purpose you are about to step into. The waiting period wasn't wasted time. It was the refining, the pruning, and the preparation for the breakthrough that's coming. Sometimes, we get discouraged in the waiting. We look around and see others moving forward, succeeding, and stepping into their calling while we remain in a season of silence or delay. But I want to remind you, what you see on the outside is not the whole picture. The enemy will try to make you think you're behind, or that you've missed your opportunity. But I'm here to tell you that you are right on time. God's timing is perfect. and He is now calling you to move forward with confidence, knowing that everything has been perfectly arranged for this moment. This divine timing is a shift in your frequency. God is aligning you with His divine rhythm, and the old ways of doing things will no longer fit your purpose. The spiritual frequency that you once operated in is no longer aligned with where God is taking you. You've been experiencing a shift, a change in the way you think, the way you speak, and the way you approach life. The old patterns, the old habits, the old mindsets, they don't fit who you are becoming. The waiting has been a time of refining your spirit and aligning your heart with God's perfect plan. This frequency shift might feel uncomfortable at first. You may feel like you don't quite fit in with the people or places that once felt familiar. That's because you've been called to a higher purpose, and the people, environments, and situations that were once part of your life can't go with you into this new season. God has been working to change your mindset, your vision, and your perspective. And now, you're stepping into a new frequency, a divine frequency that will take you to places you never thought possible. You are not here by accident. The waiting season, the delays, the closed doors, they've all been part of a divine orchestration. You are being called into something greater, something powerful, something that will align perfectly with God's timing. And as you step into this new frequency, you will begin to experience divine acceleration. The doors that were closed will begin to open. The opportunities that seemed out of reach will now be within your grasp. And the relationships you've been praying for will start to align with your divine purpose. But there's one thing you need to understand. When the doors begin to open, when the acceleration begins to happen, it will require you to step forward with boldness and faith. The waiting period has prepared you for this moment. You have been equipped, refined, and strengthened for the purpose that lies ahead. You are not the same person you were before. The delays, the closed doors, and the waiting seasons were not in vain. They've been preparing you for this divine acceleration. Now that you've begun to recognize that the delays and the waiting seasons you faced were not hindrances but rather divine protection, it's important to understand how these seasons have prepared you for the next step in your journey. The divine window of acceleration that is opening for you is not just about moving quickly. It's about being ready to walk through the doors that God is about to open. It's about aligning yourself with the divine frequency that is shifting within you. And it's about stepping confidently into your purpose. I want you to consider for a moment the things that have not worked out for you in the past. Have you ever looked at a situation that seemed like a failure or a missed opportunity, only to later realize that it was actually a blessing in disguise? God is the master orchestrator of your life, and His divine protection is at work in ways you cannot always see. Every delay, every door that closed, and every situation that didn't go as planned was actually part of a greater plan, God's plan. There is a season for everything under the heavens, and God's timing is perfect. In your journey, there have been moments where it felt like you were waiting in vain. Perhaps you wondered why others around you seemed to be moving forward while you were stuck, unsure of your next step. But what you may not have realized during those moments was that God was building walls of protection around you. He was setting up boundaries to keep you from walking into situations or relationships that weren't meant for you. Sometimes, we think that because we don't have immediate answers or visible progress, something is wrong. We ask ourselves, why isn't this happening for me? But it's important to understand that God's delays are not denials. In fact, many times, those periods of waiting are when God is doing the most work behind the scenes. He is positioning you for something greater, something better, something that is aligned perfectly with your divine purpose. Think of it this way. When a seed is planted in the ground, it doesn't immediately sprout. The seed needs time to grow roots, to take in nourishment, and to be protected from outside elements before it can rise to the surface. The waiting period for a seed is essential for its development. If it were forced to grow too quickly, or exposed too soon to the elements, it wouldn't be able to thrive. In the same way, the waiting seasons you've been through were a time of developing your roots, your character, your faith, and your resilience. so that when you step into your destiny, you'll be strong enough to handle the blessings and the responsibilities that come with it. There are also moments in life when you feel like you've been forgotten, abandoned, or overlooked. Perhaps you've been praying for a breakthrough for years, asking for doors to open, for opportunities to manifest. Yet, it seems like the doors remain closed, and the answers you're seeking have not come. But during these times, I want you to reflect on this. What if the closed doors were God's way of protecting you from something that wasn't meant for you? What if the delay was actually part of God's divine protection, keeping you from stepping into a situation that would have derailed your destiny? There's a profound truth in understanding that not all opportunities are meant for us. Sometimes, the very thing we think we want or need could lead us down the wrong path. God sees the bigger picture, the parts of your life that you can't yet see. And when a door remains closed, it's not a punishment, it's divine protection. God is ensuring that you are positioned in the right place, at the right time, with the right people, and for the right purpose. This perspective changes everything. It allows you to see that the delays you've faced were not failures or signs that you're being held back. They were part of God's intentional plan to protect you and to set you up for the greater things He has in store for you. When you align yourself with this understanding, the waiting seasons become a time of peace, patience, and trust, rather than frustration or fear. But what happens when you enter into divine acceleration? The waiting period is over. The doors that have remained closed are about to swing wide open, and it's time for you to step into your purpose. The protection that God has provided in the past will now give way to opportunity. You will begin to see things move faster than you've ever experienced. Opportunities will align with your divine calling. Relationships that were once distant or uncertain will now come into perfect alignment with your purpose. It will be a season of divine acceleration. However, as you step into this acceleration, I want to remind you of something important. You are not stepping into it on your own. The same God who protected you during the waiting period is the God who will now accelerate your journey. You will not be moving in your own strength, but in the power of God's guidance. He is the one who will open the doors. He is the one who will provide the resources, and He is the one who will ensure that everything falls into place perfectly. This divine acceleration will require your full participation, but it will also require your full trust. God has been preparing you for this moment. The waiting seasons were never in vain. They were part of His divine strategy to equip you, to strengthen you, and to protect you. Now that the moment has arrived, it's time for you to step forward, knowing that God's timing is always perfect. In the coming days and weeks, you will begin to see things unfold at a pace you never imagined. Opportunities will come quickly, doors will open effortlessly, relationships will form, and your path will become clear. This is the season you've been waiting for. And though it may feel fast, and though it may feel overwhelming at times, remember that you are moving in alignment with God's perfect plan. The protection you received in the waiting season is now giving way to divine favor and opportunities. And as you step into this acceleration, trust that God is the one orchestrating every detail. His plan for your life is unfolding at the exact right time, and you are right where you need to be. As you step further into this season of divine acceleration, you need to understand something critical. With every step forward in God's plan for your life, the enemy is right there, trying to thwart your progress. While God is orchestrating your breakthrough, the enemy is doing everything he can to provoke you, to bait you into reacting out of alignment with God's timing. This is not just a journey of stepping into blessings and opportunities, it's also a journey of spiritual warfare. The enemy knows that the more aligned you become with God's purpose, the greater the impact you'll have. He knows that your breakthrough will not only affect you, but will ripple out and touch the lives of those around you. So, his goal is simple: to delay, distract, and derail your progress. He will use every tactic at his disposal to provoke you, to get you to act prematurely, and to shift you out of God's perfect timing. One of the most insidious tactics the enemy uses is the temptation to speak prematurely. You see, in this season of divine acceleration, God is aligning everything for you. Relationships, opportunities, resources, they're all coming together at the right time. But one thing the enemy wants more than anything is to disrupt God's perfect timing, and he will do that by getting you to speak before it's time. He knows that your words are powerful, and if he can provoke you to speak too soon about what God is doing in your life, he can open the door for confusion, resistance, and delay. You may have already felt this pressure. Perhaps you've been on the edge of a breakthrough, and someone asked you about your plans, your dreams, or your next steps. And for a moment, it felt like you had to explain everything to them. You might have felt compelled to share, to justify, or to explain why things are taking longer than you expected. And in those moments, the enemy was trying to provoke you. He wants you to reveal your plans, to speak prematurely about what God is doing in your life. Why? Because the moment you expose your plans before they are aligned with God's timing, you invite spiritual warfare into the process. The Bible says that life and death are in the power of the tongue. Proverbs 18:21. Your words have the power to shape your reality. When you speak out of turn, you open the door for the enemy to interfere. He'll use your words against you to provoke confusion, jealousy, or even fear. And once those words are spoken, they can't be taken back. The enemy knows that once you speak prematurely, the spiritual climate shifts. What was once a smooth path of divine acceleration becomes clouded with resistance. But here's the good news. Silence is your weapon. God has already given you everything you need to overcome these tactics. He's not asking you to remain silent because he wants you to hide or retreat from life. No, silence is not about passive inaction, it's about strategic restraint. It's about trusting in God's timing so deeply that you hold your words, protect your plans, and allow God to unfold his promises at the perfect moment. The enemy's strategy is not subtle. He uses emotional triggers, doubts, and insecurities to provoke you into speaking prematurely. In the spiritual realm, your words create momentum. They either align with God's purpose or they allow the enemy to plant seeds of doubt and delay. When you feel the pressure to defend your plans or to share your vision too soon, it's a sign that the enemy is trying to disrupt God's divine timing. And you have the power to resist this temptation by choosing silence. Now, you might be asking, but what if I'm missing out? What if I'm not speaking up for myself enough? Shouldn't I be advocating for my dreams, my goals, my breakthrough? Here's the truth. God is your advocate. You don't need to defend yourself or your plans. God has already gone before you, and he will make the way clear. Your silence does not mean you are passive. It means you are trusting that God is already at work behind the scenes, arranging everything in your favor. In moments of spiritual warfare, the enemy will try to use guilt or fear to get you to speak before it's time. He'll make you feel like you're not doing enough, or like you're being overlooked. But I want you to know that your silence is not a sign of weakness or inactivity. It is your shield. It is your decision to remain in God's timing and to protect what he's doing in your life. Let's look at a few key biblical examples of how silence was used as a weapon in spiritual warfare. These stories show us the power of remaining silent at the right moment, how silence aligns us with God's plan, and how it protects us from the enemy's tactics. One of the most powerful examples is Joseph, whose dreams were central to his destiny. God revealed Joseph's future to him, showing him that his family would bow down to him. In his excitement, Joseph shared his dreams prematurely with his brothers. Instead of celebrating with him, his brothers grew jealous and sold him into slavery. That early revelation led to years of hardship. What if Joseph had kept his dreams to himself, waiting for the right time to reveal them? What if he had trusted God's timing and allowed his dreams to unfold naturally? The enemy took advantage of Joseph's eagerness to share his vision too soon, and it caused him to face unnecessary conflict and delay. Jesus, on the other hand, gives us another profound example of how silence can be used strategically. When he was brought before Pilate, Jesus chose to remain silent. He had every opportunity to defend himself, to explain his purpose, to justify his actions, but he didn't. He knew that the greater mission was to submit to the Father's will and trust in God's timing. His silence before Pilate wasn't weakness, it was strength. Jesus understood that his silence was the key to fulfilling prophecy and accelerating his mission on earth. By remaining silent, he allowed God to orchestrate his path, ensuring that the ultimate purpose would be fulfilled. David, too, provides us with a powerful example. When Saul, the king, sought to kill him, David had multiple opportunities to take matters into his own hands. He could have killed Saul and ended the chase once and for all, but he didn't. Instead, he remained silent and trusted that God would deal with Saul in his own time. David's restraint in the face of provocation was an act of trust. He didn't need to defend himself. He knew that God would elevate him at the right moment, and silence was the key to that divine elevation. These examples, from Joseph, Jesus, and David, teach us that silence is not surrender, it is strategy. It is a tool that aligns us with God's perfect timing and protects us from the enemy's attacks. In moments of spiritual warfare, silence shields us from unnecessary conflict, premature exposure, and emotional reaction. It keeps us aligned with God's will, trusting that He will open the doors at the perfect moment. Now that we've established how the enemy uses premature exposure and provocation to derail your divine timing, let's dive deeper into how silence becomes a weapon of spiritual warfare. Silence is not about withdrawing from the world or passively waiting. It's an active, intentional choice that keeps you aligned with God's will and purpose. And in this season of acceleration, mastering the art of silence is crucial for overcoming the enemy's tactics and protecting the blessing that God is about to pour into your life. The enemy's goal is to get you to act or speak before the time is right. He wants you to move out of alignment with God's perfect timing, because he knows that when you're aligned with God, you can't be stopped. The enemy's tactics are subtle. He doesn't always send obvious attacks. Instead, he'll try to provoke emotional reactions, create confusion, or even make you feel guilty for waiting. He will try to bait you into reacting out of frustration, fear, or insecurity. But here's the truth. The enemy cannot move you out of God's timing unless you let him. When you encounter these emotional provocations, whether it's someone questioning your plans, people pushing you to speak or act before you're ready, or feelings of insecurity or guilt creeping in, remember that silence is your protection. Silence isn't just about holding your tongue. It's about keeping your heart and mind focused on God's timing. When you remain silent, you create a space where God can work uninterrupted. It's in that space of quiet trust that you allow the Holy Spirit to guide you, to prepare you, and to open doors that only He can open at the perfect time. Let's look at Joseph again. His story is a powerful reminder of the dangers of speaking prematurely. After his dreams were revealed to him, Joseph's excitement led him to share them with his brothers, which ultimately set him on a path of betrayal, imprisonment, and hardship. What if Joseph had waited? What if he had kept his dreams silent and trusted that God would reveal them at the right time? The enemy knew that Joseph's dreams had the power to elevate him, and he used Joseph's eagerness to share his vision to disrupt God's timing. When you share your dreams too soon, you open yourself up to unnecessary resistance and delay. But when you remain silent, you protect your destiny and allow God to do the work behind the scenes. Now, let's look at Jesus' example. During his trial before Pilate, Jesus had every right to defend himself, to speak out, and to explain his purpose. But he chose silence. In the face of false accusations, mockery, and injustice, Jesus chose to remain quiet. His silence was not weakness, it was strength. It was a deliberate decision to submit to God's plan and to allow His will to unfold without interference. By remaining silent, Jesus was fulfilling prophecy, and He was ensuring that God's plan for salvation would unfold perfectly. Had Jesus spoken out in his defense, it could have delayed the process. But his silence positioned him for the greatest breakthrough in history, the victory over death and the fulfillment of God's ultimate purpose. David's story also teaches us the value of silence as a spiritual weapon. When King Saul was chasing David, David had several opportunities to strike back. But in 1 Samuel 24, David chose silence. He could have killed Saul and taken the throne by force, but he didn't. Instead, he trusted that God would elevate him in his time. David's silence before Saul was a powerful statement of faith. It was a declaration that he didn't need to fight for what God had promised him. God would bring the victory in his perfect timing, and when the time came, David was elevated to the throne not by force, but by God's will. These examples show us that silence is not surrender, it's strategy. It's the ability to trust that God is at work behind the scenes, aligning everything perfectly, and that you don't need to rush, speak, or act before the time is right. The enemy wants you to believe that you must take matters into your own hands. He wants to provoke you into speaking too soon, to get you to defend yourself or push for what God has already promised. But God's way is different. God's timing is perfect, and his plans cannot be thwarted by anything or anyone. In this season of divine acceleration, your silence will protect your purpose. As God begins to open doors and opportunities, the enemy will try to rush you, to make you feel like you need to act immediately. But when you wait in silence, when you trust that God is orchestrating everything in his perfect timing, you align yourself with the flow of divine purpose. You prevent the enemy from distracting you, from getting you to speak out of turn, and from throwing you off course. Your silence doesn't stop the process, it accelerates it. It gives God room to work and ensures that everything unfolds exactly as he has planned. There will be moments when the enemy tries to bait you into revealing too much. He may use questions, accusations, or even well-meaning advice to get you to speak prematurely. But you have to recognize these traps for what they are. The enemy will try to make you feel like you have to explain yourself, to defend your decisions, or to rush into action. This is a spiritual trap designed to derail your progress and disrupt your alignment with God's timing. But you don't have to fall into that trap. Silence is your defense. When you remain silent, you are declaring your trust in God's ability to move mountains and to open doors at the right time. So, what can you do when the pressure is on, and you feel the urge to speak or act too soon? First, recognize the tactic. When you feel the urge to react, whether it's responding to a provocation, defending yourself, or rushing into a decision, pause. Take a moment to reflect. Ask yourself, is this the right time? Am I moving according to my own urgency, or am I waiting for God's timing? If you feel the urgency to speak, respond, or act, it's likely the enemy trying to provoke you into reacting too soon. Your response should be rooted in peace and trust, not in fear or pressure. Hold your silence. Trust that God will open the doors when the time is right. As we journey through this divine acceleration, it's crucial that you understand the role silence plays in aligning you with God's perfect timing and divine strategy. Silence is not a passive state. It is an active, deliberate choice to trust God's process and to wait for his guidance. It is a weapon in your spiritual arsenal, one that protects your purpose, shields your destiny, and positions you for the breakthroughs that are about to unfold. There's a common misconception that silence is simply the absence of words. But silence is so much more. It's the space where God can work without interference, where your faith is refined, and where you can hear his voice clearly, above the noise and chaos of the world. You see, silence isn't about being still, out of fear or passivity. It's about creating space for God to move. And in this season of divine acceleration, it's silence that will unlock the strategy you need to step into your purpose with clarity and confidence. The world around us constantly pressures us to speak, act, and respond immediately. We live in a culture of instant gratification, where everything is rushed, and the emphasis is often on doing more, faster. But God's way is different. His timing is perfect, and His plan unfolds at the pace He has set. It's in our moments of silence, our moments of waiting, that we align ourselves with His timing. Silence gives us the ability to step back and allow God to reveal His plan without the noise of our own ambitions and desires getting in the way. Let's take a look at some of the great figures in the Bible who use silence as a strategic tool, trusting that God would reveal His will at the right time. These examples are not just stories from ancient times. They are living lessons for us today. Joseph, Mary, David, and Nehemiah, each of them knew the power of silence in their own journey, and their stories offer us invaluable lessons in how to use silence to protect our purpose and move forward in divine acceleration. We begin with Joseph, whose story is a perfect illustration of the consequences of speaking prematurely. Joseph had a dream. It was a powerful, prophetic dream that revealed his future, his family bowing down to him, and him being elevated to a place of prominence. But Joseph, in his excitement, shared the dream with his brothers far too soon. Instead of receiving support, he faced jealousy and betrayal. His brothers, in a fit of rage, sold him into slavery. Joseph's premature revelation of his dreams led to years of hardship. Had he waited and kept his dream between him and God, the trajectory of his life might have been different. This is not to say that his eventual rise to power was not part of God's plan, but rather that his early exposure to his dream brought unnecessary conflict and delay. The lesson for us is clear. There are times when silence protects your destiny. Joseph's willingness to remain silent could have spared him years of hardship and expedited his journey to fulfillment. Joseph's story reminds us that there is a time for everything. There is a time to speak, but there is also a time to wait. The enemy will always try to provoke you into revealing your plans too soon. He'll use your excitement, your passion, and your desire to share to provoke you into stepping outside of God's timing. But silence allows you to guard what is sacred. It allows you to protect the very thing that God is cultivating in your life. When God gives you a vision or a dream, it's important to hold it close until He opens the door for it to be revealed. Trust that He will lead you to the right moment. Let's now look at Mary, the mother of Jesus, another powerful example of how silence aligns us with God's plan. When Mary learned from the angel Gabriel that she would conceive the Son of God, she didn't immediately go out and tell everyone. Instead, she kept the news in her heart, treasuring it in silence. Mary understood that the divine mystery entrusted to her was too sacred to be shared prematurely. She understood that silence was necessary to protect what God had given her. Mary's choice to remain silent was a strategy of preservation. She didn't rush to explain herself or justify her situation to others. Instead, she allowed God to guide her, knowing that He would reveal the truth in His perfect time. When the right moment came, Mary spoke. But until then, she protected the divine mystery within her. Her silence didn't mean she was hiding. It meant she was waiting on God's timing, trusting that He would unfold His plan in the right season. Jesus also provides a powerful example of silence in His earthly ministry. When He was arrested and brought before Pilate, He was asked many questions. Yet, in that moment of intense pressure and accusation, Jesus chose silence. The Bible tells us in Isaiah 53:7 that He was oppressed and afflicted, yet He did not open His mouth. Jesus' silence before Pilate was not a sign of weakness, it was an act of strength. He understood that speaking in that moment would interfere with God's plan. By remaining silent, He allowed the will of God to unfold without interruption. Jesus' silence was a direct act of obedience. He knew that His mission was not to defend Himself, but to fulfill the prophecy, to submit to God's plan for salvation. His silence in that moment was part of the divine strategy to bring about the redemption of the world. The silence He practiced in the face of opposition ultimately led to His victory on the cross. His silence didn't prevent the plan from unfolding, it made it possible. Lastly, let's look at Nehemiah. Nehemiah's story provides an excellent example of strategic silence in the face of opposition. Nehemiah had received a divine burden to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, but before he took any action, he spent time in prayer and silence, seeking God's direction. When the moment came for him to ask the king for permission to rebuild the walls, Nehemiah didn't rush in with his request. He waited for the right moment and then spoke with wisdom and authority. Nehemiah's restraint and strategic silence were key to his success. He didn't act impulsively. He didn't rush to get approval or reveal his plans to others. Instead, he waited for God's perfect timing. When the time came, Nehemiah acted boldly, knowing that God had prepared the way for him. His silence allowed him to receive God's direction and protection, and it made the moment of his action all the more powerful. As we continue to explore the power of silence as a strategic tool in your journey, it's important to dive deeper into the personal application of what silence can do for you, especially in moments of tension or spiritual warfare. You've seen how Joseph, Mary, Jesus, and Nehemiah all used silence to protect their destinies, align with God's perfect timing, and accomplish great things. Now, it's time to apply these lessons to your own life and understand how you can embrace silence as a weapon for divine strategy. The challenge you face today is to recognize when silence is required and to act on it. There are moments in your life when the enemy will provoke you, when the world will press you to speak, to act, and to react. But true spiritual strategy involves knowing when to remain silent, trusting that God is working behind the scenes, and knowing that in silence, you are aligning yourself with God's timing for the breakthrough that is about to come. One of the most powerful tools for embracing silence is self-restraint. In a world where we are constantly encouraged to speak our truth, defend ourselves, and express our opinions, self-restraint may feel countercultural, even uncomfortable at times. But this discipline is essential for your spiritual growth and success in this season of acceleration. When you choose to practice restraint, you are choosing to trust that God's will prevail. Even when you are tempted to explain, justify, or act out of fear or frustration. Consider the moments in your life when you've been tempted to speak out of emotion. Perhaps someone questioned your path, or you faced misunderstanding or criticism. The enemy thrives in those moments, seeking to provoke you into defending yourself, explaining your choices, or even rushing into action because of a sense of urgency. But every time you resist the urge to speak too soon, you are protecting the sacredness of what God is doing in your life. Your words have power, and when you wait for God's timing, you ensure that those words will bring life and not confusion. Self-restraint also helps you to avoid the trap of comparison. It's easy to look at others who seem to be moving ahead, speaking their dreams, and achieving success, while you feel like you're stuck in silence. But what you don't see is that their public journey might not be aligned with God's perfect timing, and their acceleration could be premature. Just because someone else is moving doesn't mean you should. The enemy loves to use comparison to get you to act out of impatience, rushing to catch up with others and losing sight of God's path for you. When you practice silence, you keep your eyes fixed on God's plan and not on others' timelines. Your journey is unique, and comparison only leads to misalignment. As you move forward in your divine acceleration, silence becomes the key to maintaining focus and discernment. There will be moments of temptation to speak, to act, or to engage in conversations that are unnecessary or premature. When that happens, remember that silence gives you space to discern. Silence is not simply about avoiding conflict. It's about listening closely to the Holy Spirit. God's voice is often quiet, subtle, and still. And when you create space through silence, you allow His voice to guide you. In moments of tension, when you feel the pressure to react or respond, silence is your opportunity to pause and reflect. This pause doesn't mean inaction. It's a moment to invite God into the situation. It's a moment to ask, God, what do you want me to do? What is your will in this moment? You might not have all the answers right away, but silence allows you to center yourself in God's presence, to reset your heart and mind, and to align your actions with His perfect will. Another benefit of practicing silence is that it helps you to avoid the spiritual trap of defending your own plans. We've all been in situations where someone questions our decisions, doubts our intentions, or challenges our dreams. The temptation is to justify ourselves, to explain why we're making the choices we are, and to defend our vision. But silence removes the need for self-defense. When you trust God's plan for your life, you no longer feel the need to convince others of your worth or your path. Instead, you rest in the assurance that God knows the plans He has for you, and He will reveal those plans in His perfect timing. Joseph didn't need to explain his dreams to his brothers. Jesus didn't need to defend his innocence before Pilate. And David didn't need to justify his decision to refrain from killing Saul. They trusted in God's timing, and their silence became the means by which God's plan was fulfilled. In the same way, you can trust that God will reveal your purpose when the time is right. The more you embrace silence, the less you will feel the need to explain yourself to others. You will walk with the confidence that comes from knowing you are exactly where God wants you to be, and His timing is unfolding with precision. One of the greatest aspects of silence is that it builds spiritual endurance. We live in a world of instant gratification. Everything is expected to happen now, and we're often urged to act quickly and without delay. But spiritual growth requires patience and endurance. Silence helps to develop these qualities. In silence, you learn to wait on God. You learn to trust His timing, and you develop the strength to endure through the waiting seasons. God is building something lasting in you during this time. He is strengthening your character, refining your faith, and preparing you to step into your purpose without rushing ahead of His plan. During the waiting, you are being prepared for something greater than you can imagine. Silence is part of that preparation. It teaches you patience, trust, and the ability to hear from God more clearly. And when you emerge from this time of silence, you will be stronger, more focused, and more aligned with your divine purpose than ever before. This is why silence is so powerful. It's not about doing nothing. It's about positioning yourself for everything God has in store for you. As we've seen from the examples of Joseph, Jesus, David, and others, silence is not just a passive absence of words, it is an active strategy. It's a weapon that guards your heart, protects your destiny, and accelerates your purpose. In a world that tells you to rush, to speak up, to take matters into your own hands, silence calls you to trust in God's perfect timing. And in that trust, you will find your breakthrough. As you continue on this journey of divine acceleration, it's essential that you recognize one of the most powerful spiritual traps the enemy will attempt to set for you: premature exposure. This is a tactic designed to provoke you into revealing too much about your plans, your breakthroughs, and your dreams before they are ready to be fully realized. It's a trap that can lead to delays, confusion, and unnecessary conflict. And the worst part is, the enemy doesn't want you to see it coming. Premature exposure is one of the most subtle ways the enemy works against us. It's often disguised as excitement, encouragement, or even good intentions. You may feel the urge to share your dreams, to tell others about your breakthrough, or to explain what you believe God is doing in your life. But what you don't realize is that revealing too much too soon opens the door for resistance and spiritual warfare that you were never meant to face. There's a reason why the Bible talks about the importance of guarding our words. Our words have power. They carry life or death, blessing or curse, acceleration or delay. When we speak out of turn, when we share what's not yet fully formed, we allow our words to become a tool in the enemy's hands. The enemy knows that premature exposure to your dreams, your plans, or your vision can derail your progress. He will use any opportunity he gets to delay what God is doing in your life. And one of the most effective ways to do this is by provoking you to speak too soon. Think about it. Have you ever experienced that feeling of wanting to share your excitement, only to realize later that doing so brought unintended consequences? Perhaps you told someone about a dream, a job, or a relationship, only for things to go wrong soon after. Maybe people who were once supportive started questioning you, doubting you, or even trying to dissuade you. You might have felt like you were being supportive and sharing joy, but in reality, you exposed something that wasn't yet ready to be shared. The enemy can use that exposure as a tool to plant doubt, confusion, and even jealousy in others. But the danger of premature exposure isn't just about what others think or say. It's about the spiritual momentum you lose when you speak out of God's timing. Every time you prematurely reveal what God is doing in your life, you risk opening yourself to unnecessary delays and spiritual battles. You invite opposition into a season that was meant to be free of distractions. You allow the enemy to sow seeds of doubt, fear, and confusion where there should be peace and alignment with God's perfect plan. One of the clearest examples of this in the Bible comes from the life of Joseph. When God gave Joseph a dream of greatness, showing him that his family would bow down to him, Joseph, in his excitement, shared that dream with his brothers. Instead of being happy for him, they became jealous and angry, and that jealousy led them to betray him, selling him into slavery. Joseph's premature exposure of his dream to his brothers set in motion a chain of events that caused him years of hardship and delay. Had he waited, had he kept his dreams to himself until the right time, he might have avoided the betrayal, the years of suffering, and the long road to his eventual rise to power. Joseph's story serves as a powerful warning about the dangers of speaking too soon. Sometimes, God reveals things to us that are sacred, that are meant to be held in our hearts and trusted to His timing. When we speak too soon, we risk attracting opposition that isn't necessary. We may cause conflict where there should be peace, and we might create delays where there should be forward momentum. God's timing is always perfect, and He knows when the moment is right for the manifestation of our dreams. When you're in a season of divine acceleration, the temptation to speak too soon or to share your excitement can be strong. But you must learn to trust God's perfect timing. Just because God has revealed something to you doesn't mean it's time to share it with everyone around you. Silence becomes your shield, your protection from the enemy's attacks. It's in the waiting, in the quiet moments, that God prepares you for the breakthrough He is about to bring. And the more you remain silent and hold your peace, the more you will see the doors of divine acceleration open without resistance. Let's look at another example from the life of Jesus. Jesus, the Son of God, had a powerful calling on His life. He knew from a young age that He was sent to fulfill the mission of salvation. But throughout His ministry, He was often silent about His divine purpose. Even when the religious leaders of the time tried to provoke Him, He remained silent or answered only when the time was right. One of the most significant moments of silence came when He stood before Pilate, accused of being a king, of being a revolutionary. Pilate questioned Him, asking, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus chose to remain silent in that moment. Jesus' silence wasn't a sign of weakness or fear. It was a strategic move. He knew that speaking in that moment would disrupt God's plan. His silence was an act of trust, an act of obedience to the Father's will. Jesus understood that by speaking out of turn, He could alter the course of His divine purpose. But by remaining silent, He allowed the plan of salvation to unfold exactly as it was meant to. His silence protected the timing of the cross, and it fulfilled prophecy in ways that His words at that moment could not have. Jesus' example teaches us that silence is not always about avoiding conflict or evading responsibility. It's about protecting what is sacred. It's about trusting that God's timing will bring the right words and the right actions at the perfect moment. Just as Jesus understood the power of silence, so must you. The next time you feel the urge to speak, to explain yourself, or to reveal your plans, remember these examples. Take a step back. Ask yourself, is this the right time? Am I speaking out of excitement, fear, or insecurity? Or am I waiting on God's perfect timing? Silence is not passive. It's a strategy. It's a strategy that aligns you with God's plan and protects the sacred work He is doing in your life. Now that we understand how the enemy uses premature exposure to delay or derail your progress, it's important to recognize the spiritual tactics that the enemy employs to provoke you into revealing too much too soon. Understanding these traps is vital to maintaining your alignment with God's divine timing. The enemy is not just interested in sabotaging your destiny. He is invested in trying to throw you off course by getting you to speak or act outside of God's perfect plan. One of the enemy's most deceptive tactics is baiting you into responding to pressure. It's subtle, and it often feels justified. You might feel the need to explain yourself, defend your actions, or respond to questions that are prying into your personal plans. It starts with a simple question or a well-meaning comment, but before you know it, you're speaking about things that aren't ready to be shared. The enemy knows that your words carry weight, and he will attempt to provoke you into reacting prematurely, especially when you are on the verge of a breakthrough. Think of it like a fishing line. The enemy dangles a question or comment in front of you, waiting for you to bite. You may feel the need to defend your intentions, explain your choices, or share your vision with someone who isn't yet part of the divine alignment God has for you. But once you take the bait and reveal what is meant to stay hidden for now, the enemy has a foothold. Premature exposure allows the enemy to sow seeds of doubt, confusion, and even jealousy. It invites unwanted opposition into your life that you weren't prepared for. What do we do when we feel that pressure to respond or explain ourselves? Resist the urge to react immediately. Take a deep breath. Walk away from the situation if necessary. The more you practice self-restraint, the more you will see the power of silence as a weapon in spiritual warfare. You don't have to prove yourself to anyone. You don't need to defend your calling or justify the work that God is doing in your life. God is your defender, your advocate. He will make your path clear at the right moment, but until then, silence guards what is sacred. Another trap that often leads to premature exposure is the need for approval. When you step into divine acceleration, the temptation to seek validation from others can be strong. People may not understand the vision God has given you, and they may press you to explain your plans or to justify the choices you're making. When you feel the need to explain yourself in order to gain approval or support, you are giving the enemy an opportunity to distract you. The more you seek validation from others, the more you open yourself to emotional manipulation and confusion. The enemy will use people, whether intentionally or unintentionally, to get you to share your plans before the time is right. He will provoke you to explain yourself or justify your purpose, especially if you are unsure or insecure about the next steps in your journey. This is exactly what happened to Joseph when he shared his dreams too soon. His brothers, jealous and envious, didn't understand what God was doing in his life. They saw his dreams as a threat and responded with anger and betrayal. Joseph's need for validation and the rush to share his vision opened the door for the enemy to cause harm. The lesson here is that your divine calling does not need external validation. God has already validated you. When you begin to seek validation from the wrong sources or share your vision with the wrong people, you are setting yourself up for unnecessary challenges. Silence in this case doesn't mean hiding your vision. It means protecting it from premature exposure and unnecessary conflict. Another tactic the enemy uses to provoke premature exposure is false urgency. The enemy will try to make you feel like you need to act now, that you have to move quickly or risk missing out on an opportunity. He will present situations where you feel like if you don't speak up or act immediately, the moment will pass you by. It might come in the form of a conversation, a deadline, or a new opportunity that seems like your only chance. The enemy's goal is to push you into a state of urgency, causing you to act before you are truly ready. But true divine timing is never rushed. God does not work on the world's timeline. His pace is perfect. Silence is your protection from false urgency. When you feel the pressure to act quickly, pause and ask yourself, is this from God? Or is this the enemy trying to provoke me into moving ahead of God's timing? When you rush ahead of God's plan, you risk making decisions that are not aligned with His will. But when you wait for His perfect timing, you can rest assured that He will provide everything you need at exactly the right moment. The pressure of false urgency can feel overwhelming, especially when you are in a season of divine acceleration. But the more you practice silence in these moments, the more you will see how God's timing always works out for your good. Waiting is not wasting time, it's an opportunity to build patience, trust, and faith. It's in the waiting that God prepares you for what's to come. And in that silence, you become more attuned to His voice, more aligned with His timing, and more prepared to step into the next phase of your journey. As you navigate this season of divine acceleration, it's critical to recognize the signs that you are being baited into premature exposure. The enemy is crafty, and his tactics are designed to pull you out of alignment with God's perfect timing. Here are some warning signs that you are being provoked. A sudden urge to defend or explain yourself. When you feel the need to justify your actions, clarify your decisions, or prove your worth to others, it's often a sign that you are being baited into speaking prematurely. The enemy will use your insecurities or doubts against you, pushing you to explain yourself before the time is right. Repeated probing questions. When people keep asking you questions about your plans, goals, or dreams, this can be a form of baiting. The enemy will use well-meaning people to get you to reveal what you should keep to yourself. Recognize that not every question requires an answer, and not every conversation requires you to share your vision. Pressure to act immediately. If you feel a sense of urgency, that you must make a decision or act now, be cautious. The enemy will often create a sense of false urgency to push you into a decision that might not be in alignment with God's will. Unexplained frustration or anger. If you feel angry or frustrated by someone's question or suggestion, it's often a sign that the enemy is trying to provoke you. The enemy uses frustration to make you act out of emotion rather than reason, which can lead to speaking too soon or making decisions based on your feelings. The temptation to compare. When you start comparing your progress to others, wondering why they're moving ahead while you're still waiting, it's a tactic designed to make you feel inadequate. Comparison breeds impatience, and impatience leads to premature exposure. Resist the urge to compare your journey with anyone else's. Recognizing these warning signs is the first step in protecting yourself from premature exposure. The more you understand how the enemy works, the more you can resist his tactics and stay aligned with God's perfect plan for your life. As we reach the final chapter of this journey, it's time to focus on what really matters in this season of divine acceleration, aligning yourself with God's perfect timing and releasing control. You've learned how silence, patience, and trust in God's process are vital to protecting your purpose. But now it's time to step fully into the breakthrough that is unfolding in your life. Divine acceleration is about more than just moving faster. It's about moving with purpose, precision, and peace. And the key to unlocking that acceleration lies in your ability to let go of control and embrace the divine timing God has set for you. One of the hardest lessons we face in life is the realization that we don't control everything. This can be particularly difficult when you've spent years working, praying, and striving towards something, only to find that God's timing doesn't always match up with our own expectations. We live in a world that pushes us to act, speak, and make things happen as quickly as possible. But the truth is, God's timing is always perfect. And it's when we surrender our need to control the outcome that we truly experience the divine acceleration we've been praying for. There's a powerful truth in understanding that divine acceleration doesn't mean you're doing more. It doesn't mean you're working harder or pushing faster to make things happen. It means you are aligning yourself with God's will and waiting for His perfect moment. In His timing, everything will fall into place. The doors that have been closed will swing wide open. Relationships will align, and opportunities will appear often in ways that you could never have predicted. But this process requires faith. It requires a deep trust that God knows what He's doing, and that His plan for your life is far greater than any plan you could devise on your own. The hardest part of divine acceleration isn't stepping forward, it's learning to let go. It's learning to trust that God will open the doors, move the obstacles, and position you exactly where you need to be at the right moment. And this process begins with surrender. The need to control our circumstances often stems from fear. Fear of failure. Fear of missing out. Fear of not measuring up. But the truth is, the more we try to control things, the more we make them about our own effort, our own strength, and our own timing. When we try to rush ahead of God's plan, we only delay our breakthrough. But when we surrender control and trust that God will open the doors in His perfect time, we align ourselves with His divine will, and everything begins to flow effortlessly. It's easy to become frustrated when we're not seeing the results we want, or when things seem to be moving slower than we'd like. But in these moments of waiting, God is working behind the scenes. He is aligning circumstances, changing hearts, and preparing you for the next phase of your journey. The key to unlocking divine acceleration is learning to trust that God's timing is more than enough. Surrendering control means letting go of the need to micromanage the process. You don't need to have all the answers right now. You don't need to know exactly how everything will work out. All you need to do is trust the one who holds the future. God knows where you're going, and He's already prepared the way for you. Your job is to stay in step with His plan, to listen for His guidance, and to walk through the doors He opens for you. But let's be real, this isn't easy. In a world that celebrates self-sufficiency and independence, surrendering control can feel like giving up. We've been taught to work hard, to push forward, and to make things happen. But there's a different kind of strength in letting go. It takes great faith to surrender, to say, God, I trust you with this. I trust you to make it happen in your time, not mine. Releasing control is not about passivity, it's about active trust. When you let go of the need to control the process, you free yourself from anxiety, fear, and frustration. You allow God to step in and do what only He can do. And that's when the miracles begin to unfold. This doesn't mean you stop working, or that you sit back and do nothing. No, God still wants you to be active, to take steps forward, and to be obedient to His calling. But it means you stop trying to force things to happen. You stop trying to figure everything out on your own, and trust that God will lead you one step at a time. One of the most important aspects of divine timing is patience. Divine acceleration doesn't mean things will happen immediately, or even in the exact way you expect. Sometimes, the path to your breakthrough is longer than you anticipated. Sometimes, you will face delays or detours that seem frustrating. But in those moments, patience is your ally. Patience allows you to stay focused on God's plan, even when it doesn't look like anything is happening. When you're waiting for the manifestation of God's promises, patience helps you endure. It keeps you from becoming discouraged or distracted by the things around you. It reminds you that God is working even when you can't see it. His plans are unfolding, and every step you take is leading you closer to the breakthrough He's prepared for you. But here's the thing about patience, it's not just about waiting, it's about how you wait. Are you waiting with frustration, doubt, and fear? Or are you waiting with faith, trust, and expectancy? Patience doesn't mean passively sitting by and doing nothing. It means actively trusting that God is at work in the waiting. It means staying faithful to the process, even when the answers aren't immediate. And as you patiently wait for God's timing, you prepare yourself to receive the breakthrough that is coming. Patience also gives you the strength to handle the breakthroughs that are coming. When you rush ahead of God's plan, you might not be prepared for the blessing that's about to unfold. But when you allow God's timing to shape your journey, you're not just getting to the destination, you're being shaped into the person who can handle the weight of the blessing. Your patience strengthens your faith, builds your character, and prepares you to step into your purpose with the maturity and wisdom that only comes through waiting. Finally, trusting the process is one of the most important aspects of divine acceleration. We often think that acceleration means getting there faster, but sometimes the acceleration is in the waiting. The faster things happen, the more quickly we're expected to adapt and respond. If we don't trust the process, we may miss the opportunity to grow, to learn, and to receive the full benefit of the breakthrough. The process is what prepares us for the purpose. It's what allows us to be ready for the doors that God is opening. Trusting the process means understanding that God is not just preparing the opportunity for you, He's preparing you for the opportunity. Every delay, every waiting period, and every moment of silence is part of the process that leads to your breakthrough. You are being positioned, strengthened, and equipped for what's to come. And when the moment arrives, you will be ready, not because you rushed, but because you trusted God's timing. As you stand on the precipice of divine acceleration, there's an undeniable truth. The key to unlocking the fullness of God's plan in your life lies in your ability to release control. We often feel that in order to achieve success, we must plan every step, control every outcome, and manage the pace of our lives. But the reality is, divine timing works on a rhythm far beyond our understanding. And when we let go of our need to control, we allow God to step in and orchestrate our destiny in ways we could never have imagined. This is where real faith begins. Faith isn't about trying to make things happen, it's about trusting that God's timing is perfect, even when we can't see the next step in front of us. It's about letting go of our tight grip on the things we desire and giving God room to move in His way and in His time. The process of releasing control may be uncomfortable, even terrifying at times, but it's in this surrender that you'll find the divine acceleration you've been praying for. The world often tells us that to succeed, we need to work harder, move faster, and be the loudest voice in the room. But God's kingdom operates differently. Divine acceleration isn't about pushing harder. It's about aligning your will with God's will. It's about understanding that there's a season for everything and that God's timing will always prevail. His plan will unfold at the right time, in the right way, and in the perfect order. Trusting in God's timing means relinquishing your own timeline. You might feel the urge to rush ahead, to force things into place, especially when you see others moving faster or achieving what you desire. But let me remind you, comparison is one of the greatest thieves of peace. When you compare your journey with someone else's, you are not only distracting yourself from your divine path, but you are also allowing the enemy to distract you from God's perfect plan. There is no need to rush. God is never late, and He is never early. He is always on time. And when you align with His timing, the acceleration you experience will be without struggle or strain. Letting go of control also means trusting that God is using every part of the journey to prepare you for your destiny. The process is as important as the promise. You may feel as though you are in a season of waiting, of not seeing the results of your hard work, or of facing closed doors. But every closed door, every delay, and every moment of silence is God's way of positioning you for the greater things ahead. His protection in those waiting periods is part of the divine process, refining you, teaching you patience, and building your trust in His faithfulness. As you embrace divine timing, it's important to remember that God's delays are not denials. What feels like a setback is actually part of His preparation for your breakthrough. You may be waiting for a job, a relationship, a financial breakthrough, or an opportunity, but God is orchestrating every detail behind the scenes. He is aligning people, resources, and circumstances in ways that you cannot see. And when the time is right, He will open the doors that no man can shut. This is where the challenge of surrender comes in. Surrendering doesn't mean doing nothing. It means choosing to trust God with the outcome. You may still need to work hard, take steps of faith, and move in obedience to God's calling. But in doing so, you aren't trying to force the doors open or manipulate the process. You are allowing God to guide you, step by step, in His perfect will. And in that surrender, you will begin to see the acceleration of blessings, breakthroughs, and opportunities that you've been waiting for. The greatest spiritual battles often happen not in the physical realm, but in our minds and hearts. The battle for trust is one of the hardest battles you'll face. The enemy will try to convince you that you're not doing enough, that you're falling behind, and that God is somehow withholding something from you. But the truth is, God is not withholding anything good from you. He is preparing you for it. Every moment of waiting, every season of silence, is His way of ensuring that when the breakthrough comes, you are fully ready to walk into it. When you release control, you stop fighting against the process. You stop trying to figure everything out on your own, and instead, you allow God to move in His perfect timing. And when you stop striving in your own strength, you make room for God to do what only He can do. The acceleration you've been waiting for will come naturally, without pressure or stress. It will come when you trust that God knows exactly what you need and when you need it. Another critical aspect of releasing control is learning to embrace the unknown. As humans, we like to have certainty, to know what's coming next, and to be in control of our circumstances. But faith doesn't work that way. Faith is about walking into the unknown, trusting that God will guide you every step of the way. It's about taking the next step in obedience, even when you can't see the full picture. The unknown doesn't have to be scary. It's an opportunity to trust God more deeply and to experience the adventure of living in alignment with His purpose for your life. Think about the times when you've had to step out in faith, even when you didn't know how things would turn out. Perhaps it was a big decision moving to a new city, changing careers, stepping into a relationship, or starting a new venture. Every time you took that step, you were letting go of control and trusting that God would guide your steps. And look at where you are now. Those moments of uncertainty led to growth, new opportunities, and the fulfillment of dreams. When you release control, you make room for God to work in ways you never expected. In this season of divine acceleration, you may feel like things are happening quickly, and the pressure to act, speak, and respond may feel overwhelming. But remember, silence and surrender are not signs of inaction, they are steps of faith. By remaining silent in moments of pressure, you allow God to align your steps with His will. The more you trust in His timing, the more quickly you will see the manifestation of His promises in your life. Thank you so much for joining us on this divine journey today. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We want to keep spreading these life-changing insights to those who need it the most. Your support helps us reach more people, and together, we can create a wave of transformation that will ripple across the world. If you're ready to embrace the transformation that's unfolding in your life, let us know in the comments below. Remember, your breakthrough is coming, and we're here to walk with you every step of the way. Stay aligned, stay faith-filled, and see you in the next video.